A whisper echoes with impossible clarity across a chamber built 5,000 years ago. This is the world of megalithic acoustics, where ancient stone structures hold secrets of sound engineering far ahead of their time. By the end of this journey, you will understand how our ancestors manipulated sound for ritual and power, changing your perception of prehistoric people forever. How did builders without modern tools create spaces where sound seems to come alive? And why would they hide such advanced knowledge in stone? What does it mean to hear the past when its original voices are long gone? These silent stone cathedrals were the pinnacle of Neolithic engineering. Imagine moving stones weighing tens of tons, some from quarries miles away, and fitting them together with such precision that they have stood for millennia. This was not the work of primitive people, but of sophisticated cultures with a profound understanding of their world. We find these chambers across the globe, from the Great Mound of Newgrange in Ireland to the underground labyrinth of the Hypogeum in Malta. Their common thread is the use of massive stones known as megaliths, assembled without mortar to create enclosed spaces. But why go to such extraordinary effort? The answer lies beyond mere shelter or burial. These were places of profound ritual and gathering. Archaeologists like Stephen Mithen argue that every aspect of their design was intentional, meant to engage all the senses in a complete ceremonial experience. Look at the structure of Micho in Scotland, where the entrance passage is perfectly aligned to capture the setting sun of the winter solstice, flooding the inner chamber with a beam of light. This reveals an advanced knowledge of astronomy. The architecture itself, with its corbelled roofs where stones are layered inward to form a ceiling, shows a mastery of physics and stability. So if these builders cared so deeply about the visual and the celestial, is it such a stretch to think they also mastered the auditory? What if the very stones were chosen and placed not just for their strength, but for their sound? The secret to the whisper that travels across 5,000 years might be locked in the granite and limestone itself. The stone itself holds the key to this auditory magic. Sound does not travel through these chambers as it would in an open field or a modern room. Inside these dense, resonant environments, every surface becomes an instrument. The hard, unyielding nature of polished granite or limestone acts like a mirror for sound waves, bouncing them back with remarkable clarity. This creates a sustained reverberation, a lingering echo that can make a single voice sound like a chorus or a soft whisper carry with the force of a shout. This phenomenon is not random. It is governed by the precise geometry of the chamber and the physical properties of the stone. Acoustic physicists like Dr. David Keating have shown that these spaces are particularly sensitive to low frequencies. The deep, rhythmic thrum of a drum or the resonant hum of a chant can create standing waves. This occurs when sound reflections from the walls reinforce each other, building in strength and causing the very air to pulse with energy. At certain frequencies, the entire chamber can begin to resonate, vibrating in harmony with the sound itself. The effect on a human being inside such a space is profound. In the oracle chamber at the Hal Saflieni Hypogeum in Malta, experiments have demonstrated that specific vocal tones cause vibrations that are not just heard, but felt physically in the bones and chest. This sonic immersion can alter brainwave patterns, potentially guiding participants into trance-like states ideal for ritual or divination. It suggests the builders were not merely creating spaces for sound, but engineering tools for consciousness. How could Neolithic cultures without oscilloscopes or computers possibly understand these principles? They were master observers of the natural world. They would have learned through trial and error, Noticing how a particular note sung in a specific corner of a cave produced a startling effect, they discovered that smoothing a wall changed the voice's reflection, or that a curved surface could focus sound like a lens focuses light. Their tools were their ears, their voices, and a patient, accumulated wisdom passed down through generations. The true genius lies in how they translated these subtle observations into monumental architecture. This resonant hum is not just an echo, it is a conversation with the chamber itself. When a singer's voice or the beat of a drum hits the exact natural frequency of the stone room, something remarkable happens. The sound wave locks into the space, its vibrations amplifying and lingering long after the original noise has stopped. Think of a tuning fork. When you strike it and bring it near another fork tuned to the same note, the second one begins to vibrate and sing in perfect sympathy. That is resonance. Inside a megalithic chamber, the entire structure can become that second tuning fork. The sound does not just bounce around, it builds upon itself, filling the air with a sustained, booming energy that you can feel in your bones. Acoustic engineer Trevor Cox has studied sites like the cairn of Gavrinis in France, where the chamber's specific dimensions create powerful, resonant frequencies. A simple hum at just the right pitch can trigger this effect, causing the space to feel suddenly alive, the very stones responding to the human voice. This was not an accident. A chant or a drone at this resonant frequency would have been transformed, its harmonics enhanced into a profound, immersive experience. The sound would not just be heard, it would become a physical presence, surrounding and enveloping everyone inside. This prolonged reverberation, where a single note can echo for several seconds, turns ordinary sound into a continuous auditory blanket, perfect for ceremonies aiming to transcend the everyday world. But this acoustic engineering had a practical side too. In certain conditions, this same reverberation can actually clarify speech. The lingering sound waves can reinforce a whisper, allowing it to travel with surprising clarity from one side of the chamber to the other. A quiet instruction or a sacred phrase could be passed through the space without anyone needing to raise their voice, making it seem as if the stones themselves were speaking. This reveals a dual purpose, blending the mystical with the practical. If resonance could make the walls sing, what other sonic tools did these builders master? Their control over sound extended even further to the precise and deliberate creation of echoes. These echoes were not chaotic noise, they were orchestrated sound. Ancient builders learned to sculpt the very path of a sound wave, using the angles of walls and the placement of openings to direct echoes in precise, predictable patterns. This is the art of sound localization, a sophisticated acoustic trick that allows a listener to pinpoint exactly where a noise is coming from, even in pitch darkness. In the long, stone corridors of the Karnak alignments in France, the researcher Iago Riznikov made a startling discovery. By humming as he walked through the chambers, he found specific locations where the sound would suddenly amplify and clarify, as if the room itself were guiding him to these acoustic sweet spots. A single clap in such a space does not just produce one loud echo. It can trigger a cascade of reflections, a rapid series of sonic rebounds that seem to come from the walls, the ceiling, and even the floor all at once. This creates an immersive, three-dimensional soundscape, a prehistoric form of surround sound that could completely envelop a listener. Imagine the power of this in a ritual setting. A storyteller or a priest standing in one of these sweet spots would not need to shout. Their voice, carried and multiplied by the architecture, would seem to emanate from the stones around the audience, giving their words a supernatural weight. A dramatic pause could be filled with the lingering whispers of their last syllable, echoing from the shadows. Music would be transformed, each drumbeat or chant layering over itself to create a complex, rhythmic tapestry. This was not merely an acoustic accident, it was a form of architectural programming. To achieve this, the builders needed an intuitive, yet profound, grasp of wave reflection. They understood that a sound wave striking a flat stone surface at a right angle would bounce straight back, while a wave hitting a curved or angled wall would be deflected in a specific direction. They were, in effect, designing sonic lenses. The question of how they accomplished this without lasers or acoustic modeling software speaks to their deep connection with the material world. They worked by ear, testing and adjusting over generations. A protrusion on a wall might be carefully smoothed away because it scattered the sound incorrectly. A niche might be carved to catch and focus a particular frequency. This was a slow, deliberate process of tuning the stone, turning a passive chamber into an active acoustic instrument. Such precise control over sound hints at an even deeper layer of intention, one that lies in the very choice of rock and the method of its assembly. The very rock these builders chose was an acoustic component in its own right. Density was everything. A porous, soft sandstone would soak up sound like a sponge, deadening echoes and swallowing whispers. But the hard, crystalline structures of granite and limestone acted like perfect sonic mirrors, reflecting noise with minimal loss of energy. This created that bright, lively reverberation that makes these ancient spaces feel so acoustically alive even today. These stones were not chosen at random. Builders worked with what their local landscape provided, but they understood its properties intimately. They would painstakingly shape these massive blocks, pecking and grinding them to create impossibly smooth, interlocking surfaces. This careful craftsmanship was not just for structural integrity, it was for acoustic purity. Every gap between stones was a potential escape route for sound, a leak that would weaken the resonant power of the chamber. By fitting them together with such precision, they created a sealed sonic environment where sound waves were trapped, forced to circulate and build upon themselves within the enclosed space. But the stones could do more than just reflect sound. Geologist John Hunter highlights a fascinating property of some rocks, particularly those with high quartz content found in certain British henges. Quartz is a piezoelectric material, meaning it can generate a small electrical charge when subjected to mechanical stress, like the pressure of countless feet walking upon it or the rhythmic stomping of a ritual dance. This charge is too small to see, but it can produce faint, subtle sounds, almost like a whisper from the stone itself. Imagine the awe of participants hearing the very floor beneath them seemingly respond to their movements with ethereal crackles and pops. This interaction between people and place could have been interpreted as the voice of the earth. We see another layer of this sonic intention at places like Stonehenge. The famous Bluestones, transported over great distances, are known to ring with a metallic, bell-like tone when struck. These were not just symbolic monoliths, they were likely used as lithophones, primitive but sophisticated musical instruments. The entire site might have functioned as a massive, open-air sound studio, where the crash of a hammer on stone produced a clear, resonant chime that carried across the plain. This reveals a society that listened to its world with incredible sensitivity, selecting stones not only for their visual grandeur but for their inherent musicality. Why go to such extraordinary lengths? Because the consistent acoustic performance of these chambers over centuries was not a happy accident. It was the entire point. The choice of stone and the mastery of its shaping were the first, most fundamental steps in a grand design, a design that would be fully realized by the chamber's final form. The architecture of these chambers is a blueprint for sound itself. Builders sculpted stone into shapes that would naturally guide and amplify the human voice. Look at the corbelled vault, where each stone layer steps inward to form a domed ceiling. This curved interior is not merely a roof, it is a perfect surface for scattering sound waves evenly throughout the space, preventing dead spots and creating a uniform, immersive auditory field. Even the narrow entrance passages, often dismissed as simple doorways, function as powerful acoustic waveguides. They act like a natural megaphone, squeezing sound waves together and projecting them forward with increased force. A quiet word spoken at the entrance can be carried with startling clarity deep into the heart of the chamber, as if the stones themselves are whispering the message onward. This is not a vague echo, it is directed sound. Archaeoacoustics expert Dr. Miriam Kohler has demonstrated how parabolic shapes carved into the walls of Maltese hypogee act like sonic lenses. These carefully calculated curves gather sound waves and focus them at a single, precise point. Imagine a speaker standing at one end of such a chamber, their voice not just bouncing randomly, but being collected and beamed to a specific listener or a ceremonial seat across the room. The effect would be uncanny, making it seem as if the voice originated from thin air right beside the listener's ear, a perfect setup for an oracle or a shamanic ritual. This sophisticated control extended beyond the walls of the structure itself. The very placement of these monuments in the landscape was acoustically intentional. A chamber entrance might be aligned with a facing hillside, turning the entire natural slope into a vast acoustic mirror that reflected sound back into the tomb, reinforcing the internal reverberations. The builders were not just working with stone, they were harmonizing their architecture with the acoustics of the earth. How could they possibly translate such subtle principles into tons of rock without modern tools? They possessed a different kind of technology, one built on acute observation and generational knowledge. The tools they wielded were deceptively simple. Antler picks, heavy stone mauls, and stout wooden levers were the instruments of this grand acoustic design. With these basic items, generations of builders quarried, shaped, and maneuvered stones that weighed more than elephants. They relied on collective human strength, on ropes, on ramps of earth and log rollers, turning impossible tasks into monuments of stone. This was not a process of brute force, but of coordinated ingenuity. The true secret to their acoustic success, however, lies in the construction technique itself, dry stone walling. Each massive block was painstakingly stacked upon another without a speck of mortar. This method created a structure that was both incredibly strong and subtly flexible. It allowed for minute adjustments, a slight twist of a lever to shift a stone a fraction of an inch, changing the angle of a wall just enough to sharpen an echo or kill an unwanted reverberation. Experimental archaeologists like John Coles have spent years recreating these methods. They have shown that through endless cycles of trial and error, these ancient engineers would have discovered how a protruding joint could scatter sound into a muddle, while a perfectly flush seam would send a clean wave of sound bouncing across the chamber. The finishing work was just as critical. Using sand and water as abrasives, they polished the interior surfaces to a smooth finish. This was not merely for aesthetics. A rough, pitted wall breaks up sound waves, diffusing them into a soft whisper. A smooth, hard surface acts like an acoustic mirror, reflecting sound with brilliant clarity and sustaining that magical reverberation. Can you picture the scene during construction? The work would have been punctuated by sound checks. A master builder might hum a low note or strike a stone with his maul, listening intently to the response from the walls. Did the sound ring true? Did it travel to the far corner? Did it build into a resonant hum or die too quickly? This hands-on approach demonstrates a profound, practical understanding of sound dynamics, a living science passed from one generation to the next. This knowledge was not confined to one isolated culture. From the corbelled tombs of Ireland's Boyne Valley to the subterranean temples of Malta, we see a shared acoustic intelligence, yet each region adapted the principles to its own landscape and beliefs. How did the sound of a chant in a Scottish tomb compare to one in a Mediterranean cave? The global scale of this phenomenon reveals a universal human drive to harness the power of sound. The same acoustic intelligence echoes across continents, separated by vast oceans yet united by stone. In the underground world of Malta's Hal Saflieni hypogeum, the oracle chamber resonates powerfully with low frequencies, the kind produced by a deep, rhythmic chant. This specific acoustic signature could physically vibrate the body, a tool perfectly suited for rituals aimed at shifting consciousness or connecting with the divine. Far to the north, in Scotland's Orkney Islands, the chambered tomb of Misho presents a different sonic profile. Its long, stone passageway and precisely built interior act like a filter, amplifying certain vocal ranges while dampening others, making a speaker's voice sound clearer and more resonant. This suggests a focus on oration or specific forms of recitation. Even at Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, one of the world's oldest temple complexes, researchers like Rupert Till have mapped the acoustics. They found that the great stone pillars and enclosures are not randomly placed. They create pockets where sound is focused and reflected, proving that this understanding of sonic architecture existed at the very dawn of civilization. When you compare the measurements, a startling pattern emerges. Chambers of a similar volume, despite being built thousands of miles apart, often share nearly identical reverberation times. This cannot be a coincidence. It points to a deliberate scaling of space for a desired auditory effect. Did this knowledge travel along ancient trade routes, passed from one master builder to another? Or did diverse cultures, in their profound engagement with the world, independently discover the same principles of sound? The answer may be both. A universal human experience of caves and natural rock shelters likely provided the initial inspiration. The awe of hearing your voice boom in a cavern is a feeling known to people everywhere. These megalithic builders took that natural wonder and codified it, engineering it into their most sacred architecture. So what was the ultimate purpose of this widespread sonic engineering? The sound was not just for show, it was the very medium of ceremony and power. Sound was the bridge between worlds for these ancient societies. In their understanding of the universe, the physical realm you could touch and the spiritual realm of ancestors and gods were not so far apart. A powerful, resonant sound was thought to be the very vehicle that could traverse that divide. The acoustic chambers they built were not just venues for ritual, they were active instruments for contacting the divine. The immersive sound environment they engineered was specifically designed to alter human perception. The deep, rhythmic drone of a drum or a chant, amplified and sustained by the stone, could synchronize brain waves, easing participants into a trance-like state. Ethnographic studies by scholars like Jeremy Montagu draw parallels with shamanic traditions worldwide, where such sonic driving is a well-documented pathway to visionary experiences. In this altered state, a shaman or priest could embark on a spiritual journey or deliver pronouncements believed to come from another world. The chamber itself became a gateway. Imagine the scene inside a Boyne Valley tomb. As the community gathers, a chant begins. It is not a single voice, but a collective sound that the stones instantly multiply and reflect. The reverberation turns a simple melody into a thunderous, layered chorus that seems to come from everywhere at once. To those present, this would not have been an acoustic anomaly. It was the sound of their prayer being amplified by the very earth, a clear sign that the ancestors or deities were listening and responding. the voice of the shaman, clarified and projected by the architecture, would carry an otherworldly authority. This sonic power also served a vital social function. When a group chants, drums, or sings together in such a resonant space, their heartbeats and breathing can subconsciously synchronize. This shared, visceral experience forges powerful emotional bonds. It transforms a collection of individuals into a unified community, all participating in a moment that feels both awe-inspiring and deeply personal. The sound was the glue that held the ritual together, reinforcing social cohesion and a shared identity. This reveals that the acoustics were never a fortunate byproduct of construction. They were a central, non-negotiable element of the design, as important as the alignment to the solstice sun. The entire purpose of these spaces was to harness sound for cultural expression, spiritual connection, and social control. This profound belief in the power of the voice naturally led to one of the most dramatic applications of their acoustic engineering, the creation of living oracles whose every word seemed to emanate from the stones themselves. The stones themselves could become the mouthpiece of the gods. In the silent darkness of a chamber like the hypogeum, a priest would step into a specific, carefully calculated spot, a place we now call an oracle niche. From this single location, a voice speaking in little more than a whisper could be heard with perfect clarity on the far side of the room. The words would not seem to travel across the space, but to materialize from the air itself, a disembodied pronouncement from the shadows. Researcher William D. McCann documented this precise effect, where the architecture acts as a natural amplifier and waveguide, beaming sound directly to the listeners. A ritual leader could deliver a prophecy without ever raising their voice, their message imbued with an unearthly authority as the stones lent their own resonant power to the performance. This was more than a clever trick, it was a masterful use of acoustic psychology. The community gathered in the chamber would not hear a man straining to project his voice, they would hear the very walls speaking to them. The line between human messenger and divine source was intentionally blurred, cementing the power of the spiritual elite. This manipulation of perception raises a deeper question. If a whisper could be transformed into a supernatural event, what other invisible forces were at work within these chambers? The answer may lie in sounds so low that the human ear cannot even register them, vibrations that bypass hearing to speak directly to the body itself. Some frequencies are felt rather than heard. Beneath the range of human hearing lies the domain of infrasound, a powerful and unsettling force. These are sound waves so low that our ears cannot register them, typically below 20 Hz. Yet, while we cannot hear them, our bodies sense their vibrations in profound ways. A persistent, deep hum at this frequency can cause sensations of dizziness, slight nausea, or a general feeling of unease. It can make your chest feel tight and create an inexplicable sense of awe or dread. Remarkably, many ancient chambers are natural generators of this very phenomenon. Acoustic studies at sites like Newgrange have revealed that under the right conditions, wind blowing across the entrance or over specially designed roof box openings can produce a steady stream of infrasound, like a silent organ pipe played by the weather itself. The structure becomes a giant subwoofer, broadcasting a message that bypasses the ears to speak directly to the nervous system. Other sources could have been equally potent. The slow, relentless flow of underground water, its movement creating constant, low-frequency vibrations through the surrounding rock, might have been perceived not as a geological process, but as the breathing of the earth or the murmur of ancestral spirits. The subtle shifting of the massive stones themselves, settling over centuries or reacting to changes in temperature, could also generate these subaudible groans. For people gathered inside, the experience would have been deeply visceral. They would not hear a noise, but they would feel a presence. The air itself would seem to pulse with an invisible energy, a physical sensation that could easily be interpreted as the touch of a god or the stirring of a ghost. This explains many modern reports of unease, transcendence, or spiritual encounters in these places. The feeling is not supernatural, it is vibrational, a direct physiological response to an acoustic environment engineered thousands of years ago. The question then becomes one of intention. Did the builders simply stumble upon these effects, or did they learn to harness them? How could they detect something they could not hear? The answer lies in their profound sensitivity to the physical world. They would have noticed how standing in a certain spot made them feel lightheaded, or how on a particularly windy day, the atmosphere inside the tomb became charged and strange. They learned to read the body's responses as a map to the invisible soundscape. By subtly altering a passageway or opening, they could tune this silent instrument, amplifying or dampening its effect to create the desired emotional impact for their rituals. This sophisticated manipulation of subaudible frequencies reveals a layer of acoustic engineering even more subtle than echoes or resonance. It was the art of controlling feeling itself, of using the architecture to compose an emotional experience that guided participants toward a shared state of mind. With the very air vibrating around them, the stage was perfectly set for the final element of this sonic temple, the deliberate and powerful use of music. The silent stones were never meant to stay silent. They were waiting for music. Ancient peoples did not just use their voices within these resonant chambers, they filled them with the sounds of simple, powerful instruments. Drums made from animal hide stretched over a wooden frame would have produced a deep, percussive thrum that locked into the chamber's natural frequencies, creating a physical vibration that could be felt in the chest of every person present. Bone flutes, like those discovered in European caves dating back tens of thousands of years, would have produced sharp, piercing notes that the stone walls would catch and weave into complex, lingering melodies. But perhaps the most ingenious instruments were the chambers themselves. A stalactite hanging from a cave ceiling or a specific, carefully chosen stone slab, when struck with a hammer, could ring with a clear, bell-like tone. These lithophones, or stone instruments, turned the entire architecture into a massive, playable xylophone. Ethnomusicologist Anna Friederich-Potengowski has explored this idea firsthand, testing replicas of ancient instruments within sites like Stonehenge. The results are haunting. A single note from a flute or the resonant chime of a struck stone does not simply fade away. It hangs in the air, sustained by the reverberation of the space, layering over itself to create a rich, atmospheric soundscape that feels both immense and intimate. This was not merely entertainment, it was a form of acoustic alchemy. The music was designed to work in harmony with the architecture, each reinforcing the other to produce a total sensory experience. What evidence do we have that this actually happened? While organic materials like wood and leather rarely survive, archaeology provides compelling clues. The discovery of bone flutes in contexts associated with ritual, along with cave paintings depicting figures playing instruments, strongly suggests that music was a core component of ceremonial life. Furthermore, certain megalithic stones show distinct wear patterns or cup marks on their surfaces, consistent with being repeatedly struck. This points to their use as permanent, fixed lithophones. The dramatic acoustic effects were not a lucky accident, they were the entire purpose of the design. This blending of art and spirituality through sound was a tool for transformation, using the physics of the chamber to guide the human mind toward states of trance or deep meditation. The proof of this sonic world is etched into the stone itself. Archaeologists have unearthed stones at sites across Britain and Brittany with distinct, polished depressions, as if they were struck repeatedly over centuries. These are not random marks, but the calling cards of ancient percussion, evidence that these slabs were used as lithophones to produce resonant, bell-like tones. In other excavations, caches of instruments have been found carefully placed near chamber entrances, from simple bone whistles to more complex drums. These artifacts are the physical echoes of rituals long silenced, tangible clues that these spaces were alive with deliberate, organized sound. To test these theories, researchers have turned to experimental reconstruction. Using three-dimensional laser scans of sites like Bryn Celli in Wales, they create perfect digital models of the chambers. Inside these virtual tombs, they can map the path of every sound wave with precision, testing how a chant would travel from the entrance to the back chamber, or how a drumbeat would resonate in the domed ceiling. What they discover is startlingly consistent. The acoustics are too effective, too finely tuned to be accidental. Archaeologist Aaron Watson has taken this a step further, physically building scale models of megalithic circles to test his hypotheses. He found that subtle features like the placement of a single pillar or the curve of a carved spiral can act as acoustic markers. These are not just decorations, they are sonic signposts designed to guide sound waves in specific directions, focusing them toward a listener or a ceremonial area. The laser scans reveal another layer of intention, showing microscopic tool marks that systematically smooth certain wall surfaces. This polishing is not for visual appeal alone, it is acoustic tuning, creating a better reflective surface for sound, much like polishing a mirror creates a clearer reflection. This marriage of traditional digging and digital technology provides a powerful validation. We are no longer just guessing about the past, we are listening to its engineered blueprint. Do these scientific findings have a counterpart in the stories these cultures left behind? The connection between sound, stone, and the cosmos forms the final piece of this ancient puzzle. Light and sound were partners in this ancient ritual. At the moment of the winter solstice inside Newgrange, a narrow beam of sunlight would pierce the long entrance passage, flooding the deepest chamber in a brilliant golden light. Now imagine that single ray illuminating a space already throbbing with the deep, resonant hum of a chant. The acoustics would amplify the human voice, turning it into a thunderous presence that seemed to vibrate in harmony with the sunbeam itself. This was no coincidence. The alignment of the architecture with the cosmos and the tuning of the chamber for sound were two parts of a single, grand design. Researchers such as Robin Heath argue that this integration reveals a holistic worldview, one where human ceremony was meant to resonate with the fundamental rhythms of the universe. The sound gave power to the light, and the light gave meaning to the sound. Together, they created a multisensory symbol of rebirth and renewal, a tangible connection to the cosmic cycle that promised the return of life after the long, dark winter. This symbology suggests that acoustics were not an isolated feature. They were a vital component of a larger cosmological system, a way to harmonize human activities with the perceived order of the heavens. The entire chamber functioned as a kind of instrument, calibrated not just for sound waves, but for the energy of the sun. How did this profound integration shape the spiritual life of the people? A ritual conducted in such a space was far more than a performance. It was a direct, visceral participation in the workings of the cosmos. The community inside the chamber would feel the sound in their bones as they watched the light crawl across the carved spirals on the walls. This overwhelming sensory input could induce a powerful psychological state, a feeling of being at the very center of a universal event. The line between the individual and the cosmos would blur, forging an unshakable belief in their place within a living, breathing universe. This engineered experience of awe was the ultimate purpose, using the physics of sound and light to compose a moment of pure transcendence. This engineered awe was not just spiritual, it was profoundly psychological. The very air in these chambers could be tuned to shape human emotion. A deep, resonant hum, sustained by the stone for several seconds, has a measurable calming effect, slowing the heart rate and easing the mind into a state of deep focus or meditation. This sonic blanket would have been perfect for quiet contemplation or for guiding participants into a receptive, trance-like state. Conversely, a sudden, sharp echo from an unseen corner could trigger a startled response, a jolt of adrenaline and heightened alertness that a ritual leader might use to punctuate a story or command attention at a crucial moment. Ancient ceremonies were masterful emotional journeys, and the acoustics provided the invisible score. Experts in environmental psychology, like Dr. Barry Blesser, have shown that prolonged exposure to specific acoustic environments directly alters our mood and even our perception of reality. A space that sounds vast and mysterious will feel vast and mysterious regardless of its actual size. In a megalithic chamber, the endless reverberation made the space feel infinite, dissolving the boundaries between the individual and the cosmos. This sensory manipulation reinforced the sacredness of the site and the authority of those who understood its secrets. A shaman who could seemingly make the stones speak, or whose voice was amplified to supernatural levels, wielded immense power. The community's shared experience of this acoustic intensity forged powerful emotional bonds, making the rituals unforgettable and their messages unquestionable. This deep psychological impact answers a crucial question: how did these cultural practices endure for centuries, even millennia? The answer lies in the unforgettable nature of the experience itself. A ceremony felt in your bones, one that literally vibrated through your body and altered your state of mind, was far more potent and memorable than one that was merely heard. It created a core memory tied to a place and a belief system, ensuring its stories and traditions were passed down through generations. But the very whispers that have endured for 5,000 years are now falling silent, threatened by the modern world they have so miraculously outlasted. The very whispers that have echoed for millennia are now growing faint under the weight of our own world. These ancient acoustic instruments, perfectly tuned by their creators, face a silent crisis. The delicate sonic balance within a megalithic chamber can be shattered by the most ordinary of modern intrusions. The constant vibration from tourist footfall, a steady drumbeat of shuffling feet, subtly shifts the stones over time, ever so slightly changing the angles that once guided sound with such precision. More insidious is the slow decay of the stone itself. Wind and water erosion, accelerated by a changing climate, can roughen a once smooth wall. A surface that acted as a perfect acoustic mirror becomes pitted and dull, scattering sound waves into a muddle and silencing the clear reverberation that once defined the space. This is not merely physical wear, it is the erasure of an engineered soundscape. In Malta's hypogeum, the threat is so acute that visitor numbers are strictly limited. Each breath from a large crowd raises the humidity inside the sealed chamber, a change that can deaden the air, absorbing the high frequencies that give a whisper its clarity and shortening that magical, sustained echo. Conservationists from organizations like UNESCO now recognize that preserving these sites means protecting their sound as much as their stones. They are as fragile as a musical instrument that has been perfectly tuned for 5,000 years, a tuning that can be lost with a single careless touch. The mission is to document this auditory heritage before it fades further. How do you study the voice of a stone chamber without speaking back to it and altering the very thing you are trying to measure? The answer lies in a silent, non-invasive form of listening. researchers deploy arrays of sophisticated sensors that can map the acoustic profile of a space without a single human voice needing to echo within it. A brief, controlled impulse of sound, often from a speaker emitting a quick burst of static, is all that is needed. Microphones placed throughout the chamber record how that sound behaves, how it bounces, how long it lingers, and where it gathers. This data creates an acoustic fingerprint, a precise digital model of the chamber's sonic soul. This model can then be used to monitor changes over years, tracking the slow degradation of a specific echo or the dampening of a resonant frequency, allowing conservators to intervene before the loss becomes permanent. These recordings are more than just data. They are a time capsule, preserving the exact auditory experience for generations who may never be able to stand inside the original. The race is on to capture these sonic landscapes before they are altered forever, a process that relies on the very same technologies that are now revealing the full brilliance of their original design. A silent impulse of sound, no longer than a snap of the fingers, now reveals what centuries of speculation could not. This is the magic of modern archaeoacoustics, where researchers wield tools like three-dimensional laser scanners to capture every contour of a stone chamber without ever touching its ancient surface. These scanners paint the space with millions of data points, creating a perfect digital twin. Within this virtual model, acoustic software can simulate the physics of sound, tracing the path of a Neolithic chant as it would have ricocheted from wall to ceiling to floor. The entire process is contactless, preserving the fragile sites while gathering a precision of data that was once the stuff of science fiction. Teams from institutions like the University of Salford employ a technique called impulse response testing. A speaker placed inside the chamber emits that brief, controlled burst of static. An array of microphones listens not to the sound itself, but to its behavior, recording how long it lingers, where it gathers, and how it decays. This single snapshot allows scientists to reconstruct the chamber's complete acoustic fingerprint. For a place like the Gavrini's cairn in France, digital simulations can now predict with astonishing accuracy how a specific drumbeat would have behaved, its resonance building in the curved ceiling or its echo focusing at a particular stone seat. These are not just abstract readings, they are a direct line back to the sensory experience of the people who built it. The technology reveals intentions that were previously invisible. A slight, almost imperceptible curve on a wall, once dismissed as an irregularity, is shown by the model to act as a precise sonic lens, designed to beam sound to a specific spot. This hard data challenges long-held archaeological theories that viewed these structures solely as tombs or monuments. It forces a re-evaluation, suggesting that acoustic performance was a primary design driver, as critical to the builders as structural integrity or astronomical alignment. The stones are finally speaking a language we have learned to measure, but does every expert agree on the translation? Not every echo in the ancient world was planned. A sharp debate divides experts, with some arguing these profound acoustic effects were nothing more than a fortunate accident. Critics like archaeologist Keith Ray question whether we are hearing the past or simply projecting our own modern fascination with sound onto it. They point to a frustrating silence in the archaeological record, the absence of any blueprint or inscription that explicitly details acoustic design. No specialized tuning tools have been found, and the very stones themselves refuse to give up a direct confession of their sonic intent. From this perspective, the powerful resonance in a tomb might be an inevitable byproduct of building a large, enclosed space from hard, reflective stone. It was a happy coincidence, they suggest, that later cultures may have noticed and incorporated into their rituals, but not something the original engineers deliberately set out to create. This skepticism forces a crucial question. Are we seeing a pattern where none exists, connecting dots across millennia to create a story we want to believe? The debate becomes even more heated at a site like Stonehenge. The idea that its ringing bluestones were part of grand musical performances is compelling, but can it be proven? Without a Neolithic concert program, the evidence remains circumstantial, open to multiple interpretations. Yet, for every skeptic, there is a proponent armed with a powerful counterargument. They ask, if these effects were merely accidental, why do we see such a consistent acoustic fingerprint in chambers built oceans apart? The nearly identical reverberation times in similar-sized tombs from Scotland to Malta feels less like chants and more like a recipe, a shared architectural formula for a specific auditory experience. This consistency points toward a collective, intentional knowledge, not a series of isolated flukes. To bridge this evidential gap, researchers are increasingly turning to living sources, indigenous cultures whose deep, continuous connection to the land preserves ancient ways of knowing. What can these living traditions tell us about the relationship between sound and stone? The living traditions of indigenous cultures offer a vital key to unlocking the silent past. Across the globe, from the songlines of Aboriginal Australia to the ceremonial kivas of the American Southwest, we find communities that have maintained a profound acoustic relationship with their landscapes for thousands of years. Anthropologist Stephen Feld spent years with the Kalulai people of Papua New Guinea, documenting how they perceive their rainforest as a vast, resonating chamber. They do not just hear the sounds of waterfalls and birds, they listen to how the forest itself shapes and responds to those sounds, using this knowledge in their music and rituals. This is not primitive superstition, it is a sophisticated form of acoustic ecology. The San people of the Kalahari use specific rock faces as natural amplifiers during storytelling, their voices echoing back to lend a supernatural weight to ancestral tales. This practice provides a stunning parallel to the potential use of oracle niches in European megalithic chambers. It suggests that ancient builders were not so different, possessing an intuitive, lived understanding of how sound interacts with stone. They would have known which rock surfaces rang true and which ones swallowed sound, knowledge gained through daily experience and passed down through generations. These ethnographic parallels provide a crucial bridge, allowing us to move from cold acoustic data to a living, breathing cultural practice. We can begin to reconstruct the scene not as a sterile scientific experiment, but as a deeply human event. The resonant hum of a chant in a Scottish tomb was likely not just a physical phenomenon, but a way of making the ancestors present, of feeling their voices in the vibrations that filled the air. This universal human connection to sound reveals a shared drive to use our environment as an instrument for cultural expression. How did this shared acoustic experience then shape the very fabric of society, binding individuals into a cohesive community? The sound that unified a community was as powerful as any written law. In a world without mass media, collective rituals were the primary engine of social cohesion. The act of gathering inside a resonant chamber and participating in a shared sonic event created an invisible bond. When a group chants or drums in unison within such a space, something remarkable happens on a physiological level. Heart rates can synchronize, breathing patterns align. This subconscious entrainment forges a powerful sense of unity, transforming a collection of individuals into a single, cohesive group with a shared identity and purpose. The acoustic properties of the chamber ensured that everyone, from the elder at the back to the initiate at the front, was immersed in the same overwhelming auditory blanket. There were no poor seats in this sonic theater. This shared, visceral experience made the rituals and the messages they conveyed unforgettable, cementing social norms and mythological histories in the memory of every participant. The very structure of the soundscape reinforced the social hierarchy. The shaman or chieftain who spoke from the acoustic sweet spot, their voice amplified and projected by the architecture, was imbued with an unshakable authority. Their words seemed to emanate from the stones themselves, a clear auditory signal of their special connection to the spiritual world. This sonic power was a tool for social organization, legitimizing leadership and ensuring that communal decisions were accepted as divinely inspired. The community that chanted together, whose very bodies vibrated in harmony with the stones around them, was a community that stayed together, bound by the profound and ineffable power of a shared sound. The very stones were tools of social order. Within the resonant chamber, not every spot was created equal. The ritual leader, the shaman, or the chieftain would have possessed the knowledge of acoustic hotspots, those precise locations where a whisper could be amplified into a commanding pronouncement. By controlling access to these sonic sweet spots, the architecture itself reinforced a clear hierarchy. When the leader's voice boomed with supernatural clarity, seemingly emanating from the walls, their authority was not just asserted, it was physically demonstrated. This was acoustic power, a tangible force that legitimized their role as the sole conduit to the spirits or ancestors. For the rest of the community gathered in the space, the experience was equally powerful but fundamentally different. Their role was to participate, to add their voices to a collective chant or a rhythmic drumbeat. As they did, something profound happened. The shared sound, magnified and sustained by the stone, wrapped around everyone present. This collective auditory experience, what the sociologist Emil Durkheim called collective effervescence, forges a powerful group identity. In the thunderous reverberation of their own unified voices, individuals felt a part of something larger than themselves. Their heartbeats could synchronize, their breathing could fall into a shared rhythm, dissolving personal boundaries and cementing social bonds. This functioned as a form of sonic coordination. In a large passage tomb, a single drumbeat or a sharp call from the leader would echo through the space, its clear signal ensuring that everyone began a chant, a dance, or a prayer at the exact same moment. These synchronized actions, all guided by the architecture of sound, reinforced the community's unity and purpose. The acoustic design was therefore a dual-edged tool, simultaneously elevating the few while binding the many. It supported the entire societal structure, from the pinnacle of leadership down to the foundation of communal cohesion. As societies grew more complex, this sophisticated understanding of sound did not disappear. It evolved, finding new expression in the grand cathedrals and temples of the classical world. The principles forged in stone did not vanish with the Neolithic era, they were simply refined. Across the Mediterranean, the great Greek amphitheaters took the concept of sound projection and scaled it to the open air. Their semicircular, step design acted as a giant acoustic filter, using the natural slope of the land to reflect voices and music clearly to every seat, even for audiences of thousands. This was no longer an intimate chamber for a few, but a public address system carved from the earth itself. This growing understanding was eventually codified into written science. The Roman architect Vitruvius, writing in the 1st century BC, dedicated entire chapters of his work to acoustics. He detailed how to select building sites for sound clarity, how to position bronze resonance vessels in theaters to amplify voices, and how the very shape of an auditorium directs sound. His writings mark a pivotal shift, transforming the intuitive knowledge of the megalithic builders into a formalized body of architectural principles. The legacy echoes even in the soaring spaces of Gothic cathedrals. Their vast, vaulted ceilings are the spiritual and acoustic descendants of the corbelled roofs in tombs like Newgrange. While built for a different god, the goal was strikingly similar: to capture the human voice and the notes of a choir, sustaining them in a reverberant cloud that would fill the entire sacred space and lift the spirits of the congregation. This unbroken thread, from a stone chamber in Ireland to a cathedral in Chartres, reveals a continuous human quest to harness sound for collective experience. So what does this 5,000-year-old knowledge mean for us today? Modern architects are now looking back to these ancient designs for solutions to our own noisy world. The challenge of creating spaces where speech is clear, music is rich, and noise is controlled is as relevant now as it was then. Could the resonant principles of a prehistoric tomb inspire the design of a modern concert hall or a quiet library? The ancient art of shaping sound with stone is no longer lost to history. Modern architects and acoustic engineers are actively looking back to these megalithic chambers for inspiration, seeking solutions to the acoustic challenges of our own time. The goal is to design spaces where sound feels alive and clear, from the grandeur of a concert hall to the quiet focus of a meditation room. Instead of relying solely on electronic amplification and sound-absorbing panels, many designers are returning to the fundamental principles our ancestors understood so well. They are using natural materials like stone and wood and incorporating curved, resonant shapes that naturally enhance and clarify sound. Look at the soaring, shell-like forms of the Sydney Opera House. Its iconic design is not merely a visual masterpiece, it is a complex acoustic instrument. The curved ceilings and walls function much like the parabolic reflectors in a Maltese hypogeum, gathering sound from the stage and projecting it out to every seat in the house, creating a rich, immersive experience for the audience. This is ancient wisdom reimagined on a colossal scale. Acoustic consultant David Lloyd points out that this is not just about superior sound quality, it is also about sustainability. By harnessing passive acoustics, using the innate properties of materials and forms to shape sound, we can drastically reduce our dependence on energy-intensive sound systems. A well-designed space can carry a whisper without a single watt of electricity, just as it did 5,000 years ago. This approach bridges a profound gap, connecting the architectural genius of our deepest past with the pressing needs of our modern world. The innovations of the megalithic builders are not curiosities in a history book. They are a living blueprint for creating more resonant and efficient spaces today. For anyone wanting to hear this ancient magic for themselves, the opportunity is closer than you might think. Accessible sites across Europe and beyond allow you to step into these sonic time capsules and experience their power firsthand. You can stand in the very spots where ancient ears once listened. Across Europe, a number of these acoustic marvels welcome respectful visitors, offering a chance to hear history with your own ears. In Ireland, the Great Mound of Newgrange allows a lucky few inside its solstice-aligned chamber, where a guide's voice can demonstrate the enduring power of its reverberation. Far to the south, the massive dolmens of Antequera in Spain stand as silent sentinels, their enclosed spaces still carrying a whisper with uncanny clarity. On these guided tours, you are not just told about the acoustics, you experience them directly. The sound becomes a tangible link to the past. At places like the Rollright Stones in England, visitors are often encouraged to test the space for themselves. Speaking a low chant or feeling the vibration of a drumbeat against the stone allows for a personal, physical connection to the rituals that once filled the air. This is not a museum exhibit behind glass, it is an interactive encounter with engineered sound. To fully appreciate what you are hearing, listen for more than just a loud echo. Pay attention to how long a single note hangs in the air, that sustained reverberation that turns a voice into a chorus. Notice if certain pitches or frequencies seem to make the space itself hum in response, a sign of resonant frequencies being activated. Try whispering from one end of a chamber to another, testing if the architecture carries your words with unexpected clarity. This hands-on discovery comes with a profound responsibility. The sonic balance of these chambers is incredibly delicate, staying on marked paths, avoiding touching the stone surfaces, and keeping voices at a respectful level are not just rules for preservation, they are essential for protecting the acoustic properties themselves. The oils from our hands can slowly degrade the smoothness of a wall, deadening its reflective quality. Excessive noise and vibration from large crowds can subtly shift the precise alignment of stones over time, silencing the very echoes we seek to hear. By being a mindful visitor, you help ensure that these ancient instruments remain tuned for generations of future listeners. This direct experience often shatters a common misconception, the idea that these profound acoustic effects were merely a fortunate accident of construction. These chambers were not ancient concert halls designed for sound alone. To believe that would be to misunderstand the complex world of their builders. The acoustic properties were a brilliant thread woven into a much larger tapestry of function and meaning. These spaces served as tombs for revered ancestors, their alignment with the solstice sun revealing a deep astronomical knowledge, and their very construction was a monumental act that unified a community. The sound was a powerful component, but it was not the sole purpose. It amplified the rituals held within. It gave voice to ceremonies of burial and renewal, but it existed alongside these other vital roles. Another persistent idea suggests the echoing whispers are ghostly or supernatural. Science, however, offers a more grounded and in many ways more fascinating explanation. Researchers like Dr. Linda Malka have emphasized that every acoustic phenomenon within these chambers, from the clearest whisper to the most unsettling resonant hum, obeys the predictable laws of physics. What might feel like a magical voice from the stones is often a natural echo phenomenon, a trick of sound reflection that the builders learned to harness with incredible skill. This distinction is crucial. Dismissing these effects as paranormal diminishes the genuine ingenuity of Neolithic engineers. They were not relying on magic, they were mastering their material environment. They understood that a smooth, hard wall of granite would behave like a sonic mirror, and that a curved surface could focus sound like a lens. This knowledge was hard-won through observation and experimentation, a testament to human intelligence rather than otherworldly intervention. Recognizing this truth empowers us to protect these sites with the respect they deserve. When we understand that the acoustics are a fragile, engineered feature, as delicate as the carvings on the walls, we see that preservation is about more than just preventing physical collapse. It is about safeguarding a 5,000-year-old sensory experience. How do we ensure that the whispers do not fall silent for good? This question brings us to the final, vital reflection on why this ancient sound matters in our modern world. The silent echoes of the past are on the verge of a digital resurrection. Emerging technologies like artificial intelligence and virtual reality promise to unlock these ancient soundscapes in ways we never thought possible. Soon, researchers will be able to create perfect digital twins of a chamber, then use AI algorithms to simulate the acoustics with absolute precision. You could put on a headset and stand in a virtual newgrange, listening as a simulated chant reveals exactly how the sound would have traveled and built upon itself 5,000 years ago. This immersive approach allows for limitless experimentation without a single footstep of physical intrusion. preserving the fragile sites for future generations while opening up entirely new avenues of discovery. The potential expands through collaboration, uniting archaeologists with acoustic physicists and, most importantly, the living knowledge of local communities. These partnerships can reveal patterns that a single specialist might miss. For example, a drone equipped with sensitive sonic sensors could be flown over a remote, unstable cairn, mapping its internal acoustic profile from the outside. This data could identify a previously overlooked resonance chamber or a sound-focusing niche that ground surveys failed to detect. Such a discovery would not only rewrite the understanding of that single site, but could provide a blueprint for what to look for in other megalithic structures around the world. This forward-looking, collaborative spirit ensures that the study of these ancient marvels does not stagnate, but continues to evolve and inspire. It pushes us to ask a profound question: what is the enduring lesson of these stone instruments? They stand as a timeless testament to human ingenuity, proving that true innovation is not always about creating new tools, but about understanding the inherent potential of the world around us. These builders looked at a slab of granite and saw not just a building block, but a musical instrument. They listened to the wind and learned to tune it. Their legacy is a reminder that the most advanced technology can sometimes be a keen ear, a patient hand, and a mind open to the hidden symphonies of the natural world. These silent stone cathedrals stand as a testament to a universal human drive, a deep-seated need to shape our world into something more than shelter. We have walked through their echoing passages, from the resonant hum of Malta's hypogeum to the solstice-aligned chamber of Newgrange, and uncovered a truth that rewrites our understanding of the past. These were not primitive huts, but masterpieces of acoustic engineering, spaces where sound was carefully tuned to transform ritual, clarify communication, and forge unbreakable community bonds. The ancient builders were physicists of the senses, harmonizing their architecture with the invisible forces of resonance and reflection. They understood that a whisper could be given supernatural weight, that a chant could vibrate in the bones, and that the very air within a chamber could be composed to guide the human mind. This profound connection to their environment speaks of an intelligence that observed, experimented, and perfected over generations. Their legacy is not just in the tons of stone they moved, but in the sophisticated sensory world they engineered within them. It challenges us to listen more closely to the past, to recognize that ingenuity is not defined by the complexity of our tools, but by the depth of our understanding. As you step away from this journey, carry that thought with you. Listen to the spaces you inhabit. How does sound shape your own experiences in a quiet room, an echoing hall, or a bustling city street? What other mysteries, hidden for millennia in plain sight, are waiting for their echoes to be heard? The stones have spoken their secrets. Now it is our turn to listen, to question, and to continue the exploration. Share your reflections in the comments below, and if your curiosity for these historical mysteries has been awakened, subscribe for more journeys into the forgotten corners of our world. Let the echoes of the past inspire your curiosity for all the wonders yet to be uncovered.